This might be the best Wednesday show of Locked On Grizzlies ever. The dynamic duo rides once more. Memphis Grizzlies beat reporter for the Commercial Appeal, my co-host, your friend, Damichael Cole, back with us. And we're going to talk urgency today. Is it really that urgent? Could the Grizzlies really possibly leave Memphis in the next few years? Should we feel urgent about specific things that the starters need to get done? Any reserves that really need to hit it out of the park to begin the upcoming season? Urgency is the name of the game here on today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I gotta apologize if I seem flustered, if I seem fired up. It's because the yin to my yang, the jam to my peanut butter, all the different pairings you can come up to. Damichael Cole is back. It's so good to see you back, partner.
Yeah, we're back. We're back. The Shaq to the Kobe,
yes.
the penny to the Shaq. It's the Shaq to me. That's my combo. But yeah, we're back. You know, the Kool-Aid to the sugar. Like let's rock and roll.
Yes. I do like that. That might be my favorite comp that you just made there. Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, a co-hosted edition once more, and I'm very grateful and happy to have him and you with us. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go check out FanDuel today. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. Make Damichael and myself a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. And Damichael, I made a vow to our audience in your absence. We're going to do our best to be your team every day through the rest of July. And then maybe August, we would say, it's your team every 3 to 4 days. Or 3 to 4 days a week, I should say. But we're going to keep grinding it out here in July, and I'm so glad to have you back with us talking about this thing that kind of blew up on social media yesterday in Memphis, an article that came out from the Daily Memphian, and it was a humdinger, if I'm being honest with you, one that I wasn't expecting to read yesterday, and I think it was one that was kind of misunderstood among fans. That's important to point out. Sam Hardiman over at the Daily Memphian. City and council's deal with the Grizz won't be done this summer. He spoke with the current mayor of Memphis, I do believe, and obviously you a little bit more in tune with the local politics than me, so I'll give it away to you here momentarily. But Memphis mayor saying that the negotiations are ongoing. If you actually read the article, which I did, I know you did as well, it's not doom and gloom by any stretch, but it's important to point out that a lot of folks freak out when they see headlines and then they don't click on the article. Maybe they don't have a subscription. And if you don't subscribe to the Commercial Appeal and to read Damichael's work, you're sorely mistaken. But I subscribe to both the Daily Memphian and the Commercial. To me, reading this article, it seems like much ado about nothing, right? Memphis is not leaving anytime, or the Grizzlies are not leaving Memphis anytime soon. But whenever stuff like this kind of creeps into the consciousness of Memphians, understandably, folks are nervous. So what's your takeaway from this? Anything that you've heard? Again, credit to Sam Hardiman at Sam Hardiman on X. He's the one who spoke to the mayor, got into how this will not be done this summer. Is this something that we should start paying more attention to as the lease comes closer to expiration in 2029? There's been a lot made of Memphis cleaning up the downtown area, trying to improve that space for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have kind of made it known they want that to happen. Is there something to this, or is it much ado about nothing?
Yeah, shout out to my guy Sam. Shout out to Sam Hardiman, a very, very sharp reporter. But yeah, I think I'm along the lines with you here, Joe, from the standpoint of this thing to me. The reason it is kind of a relevant conversation, in my opinion, is because the mayor, Paul Young, kind of, shifted. The plan has shifted a little bit from February to now. In February, there's an article written, by my colleague, Jonah Dillon in February. And in February, Paul Young said, we're working toward getting to an agreement on the principles that go in a lease by the end of the summer. So this was February. of this year. He said by the end of the summer, the plan was, to get an agreement on the principles that can go in a lease by the end of the summer. So that was kind of, when that was put out there, that was strong. And then he said again, he said, we want to have a lease agreed upon before we release the remaining amount of, and put that toward the project. This is, in regards, to the money that's going towards the renovations and things, for Simons Bank, Liberty Stadium, FedExForum, etc. So when you factor all of that in February, it was put in writing, both by Jonah and Sam, that the summertime would be basically, it's kind of was the framework, the plan. And now that the summer is here, that's when Sam, said, the story after talking, with Paul Young, he said, we certainly are still having conversations. We are working towards an agreement. I'm not sure of the timing at this point, but we're still very optimistic that things will move forward. That's the big news for me. You know me, Joe, and most of the Locked On Grizzlies viewers know me as well. I'm not going to blow this out of proportion. To me, the big news here is the fact that it was planned. They were hopeful that an agreement would be done in the summertime, and it appears that won't be the case. But other than that, there's still time. It still seems to be, kind of a priority, to get this thing done, to get this worked out. And quite frankly, to me, it's less about, the idea of the Grizzlies leaving Memphis and more about the framework of how this agreement would work. That's kind of, my idea and opinion of the situation. Now, when you talk about this from an NBA perspective, when you escape the Memphis side of it and you go to the NBA side of this, Adam Silver was asked about expansion while we were in Las Vegas at Summer League. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but you guys can listen to it. Go listen to what he said. He had a very, eloquent conversation about expansion. But what I got from it, me personally, was that right now, they're not trying to add teams to the league right at this very moment. So with that being the case, if there are going to be teams, quote unquote, added to this league, it would be addition by subtraction. It would be, another franchise selling or whatever the case may be in order for a Las Vegas, a Seattle, or, whatever city you think is kind of hungry for an NBA team right now, getting that opportunity. If it's to happen sooner than later, it would be, via that route more so than the league just expanding to 32 teams or something like that. That feels more of a reality to me than the idea of adding on teams based on the conversations that Adam Silver, most recently had. So that part of it does, put a little, I guess, whatever you want to call it, in the back of your head, a little doubt, I guess, in the back of your head. Doubt might not be the right word, but it puts it in the back of your consciousness. Like you're thinking about it a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's something where we're like, you're very worried. The worry, the only concern to me, or whatever, however you want to look at it, is in February, the idea was like, okay, we could potentially get this done by the summer. And now that the summer's here, it's like, I don't know the timeline yet, which is, what Paul Young said, but it's still, something that he's very confident in them getting done. And it still feels like something that's a priority. So we'll see, how that process continues to play out. But yeah, that's pretty much my take on it, Joe. I feel like at the end of the day, it's something where the framework is more of the question than the idea of the Grizzlies potentially being relocated or something like that.
If you're an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, you know that I don't trust the worst commissioner in professional sports, Adam Silver, with a butter knife, much less anything involving expansion.
Here we go.
So I trust him as far as I could throw him, and I could throw him pretty far. He looks like he's pretty light. I am fairly confident that the Memphis Grizzlies are not going to move, because the easiest thing for them to do is to stay. Here's the reality. We live in the United States of America, right? And this is most certainly not going to be a political podcast. And I'm not going to explain economics to you because you don't want to hear that from me. The Memphis Grizzlies are a part of a larger corporation, essentially, and their goal is to make money. So they are going to get the very best deal that they can possibly get from the city of Memphis and Shelby County and all the folks around to make it as financially profitable as possible. And profit is a word you can use loosely in Memphis when it comes to this organization. They're going to do everything they can to make them as financially solvent, maybe that's the best way to put it, as possible. Okay? So I am highly doubtful that the Grizzlies will leave. But if there were any market in the National Basketball Association that should not play hardball with the National Basketball Association, it is the Memphis market. And I know you know that, partner. A lot of our listeners and viewers probably know that. People want this team to leave Memphis from all corners of the United States of America. Okay? If you are a basketball fan that is not in Memphis, if you are a basketball fan that is not in Memphis, a majority of you probably want the Grizzlies to go somewhere else, whether it's Nashville or Las Vegas or Seattle or anywhere else other than Memphis. I want them to stay in Memphis. I know Damichael wants them to stay in Memphis, and I'm hopeful that a majority of our audience wants them to stay in Memphis. To me, this is nothing more than the team making sure, and the city, to be fair, there has to be that intersection point of what makes the most sense for the city and what makes the most sense for the organization. And sometimes that takes longer than a few months to negotiate, right? So I am not concerned yet, but I do think that the Grizzlies have the leverage here. And that is something to keep in mind as this plays out moving forward. Let Damichael and I know in the comments. Hit us up on X at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Are you worried about the Grizzlies leaving? We're not there yet, but I'm with Damichael. This is a mild eyebrow raise because the delay. The closer you get to 2029, that's when this conversation gets real, right? The closer you get. We're not quite there yet. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to discuss keeping that sense of urgency. I shared who I thought the starters for the Memphis Grizzlies should be when they're healthy, again, if that ever happens. On yesterday's show, we're going to talk about who should be the most urgent starter coming up next. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at FanDuel. I'm a big FanDuel fan. Summer sports are in full swing. Baseball, golf, soccer, whatever you're in the mood for, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? Put a little bit more edge on it. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are being sunburned at the beach. FanDuel is easy to use. They have wonderfully quick payouts, and they make every regular season game feel like a must watch event. Whether it's the same game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, it makes you feel like you're a part of the action over at FanDuel. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Damichael, my starters from yesterday's show, and feel free to weigh in on this if you agree, disagree, whatever the case might be. Again, this is when the team is healthy, which they're not going to be on opening night, right? Zach Edey won't be there. Jaren Jackson Jr. likely won't be there. It's possible, more possible for Jaren than Zach, is my current read of the situation. You may have updated information on that. But point being, when healthy, I've got Ja Morant, Jalen Wells, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey. Those are my starters. Maybe share if you disagree with that. Regardless, agree or disagree, which of those people do you think should feel the most urgency in terms of achieving their goals? For me, it's Ja Morant, and I talked about on yesterday's show. We have to move on from are you trying to win a championship or not, because I think the Grizzlies aren't trying to win a championship, right? I think that's been proven. So the new one is without Ja Morant being Ja Morant, none of this matters. Right? Nothing else matters. And it's a working title. It's a working shirt. Ja Morant is my biggest urgency. If you want this team to be a playoff team, it has to start with Ja. Where do you stand on the starters, and who needs to feel that largest sense of urgency?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on the Ja Morant section there, but I'm gonna pivot a little bit because that was your pick, that was your choice. But I want to start by saying this, and I'm gonna keep this is gonna be the first time I've said this publicly on any platform, but I've talked with people about this idea with Ja Morant. And Joe, I'm just going to put it like this. Why can't, if the starting lineup is what you just displayed, outlined, or if it's something even remotely similar to that, why can't Ja Morant have his real breakout season? Why can't he average 27, 28 points a game.
There's
Why
no
can't he
reason.
take that?
He absolutely should.
It's time, right? 22 is cool, 23 points, 24. But every superstar has that leap season, right? Shea went from a 22, 23 guy. Now he's sitting at 30. James Harden did it from his early years in Houston, and then he plateaued into a 30-point per game guy. Russell Westbrook did it at a point in his career. Kevin Durant was a born scorer. He kind of an anomaly into the situation. LeBron James technically did it in a way. But the point is, the way that lineup will be structured, to me, it's basically, this is how I've kind of talked about it with people, where you got Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Jalen Wells, two guys who, if you just put it, what it is, they're not the greatest shot creators. They're probably going to be below league average in that area, but they both can knock down 3-point shots. They're both going to help the team from a spacing standpoint. So when you have those two guys, and you got Jaren Jackson Jr. is pretty much your other guy who can go get his own basket. You got the screen setting, ability of a Zach Edey. I feel like it's going to be really beneficial for Ja in a way where he has to be more aggressive than ever as a scorer. And I say that because Ja Morant will tell you himself, this isn't just me talking. Ja Morant will tell you himself, like, he could score more, but he chooses over the course of his career to be more of a pass first, more of a get guys involved type of player. And when Desmond Bane was in the lineup, I think that was just an easy decision for him. You got another guy in the backcourt with you averaging 20-plus points per game. Easy to defer to Dez in certain moments. But now you don't have Dez. You got two guys in your backcourt who probably going to average below 15 points a game. We're just being honest. So it's going to be pivotal for Ja to say, you know what? Allen Iverson had to do it when he was surrounded by a bunch of defenders. Russell Westbrook had to do it, after KD left. And it happens. But it's time for him to say, look, put my head down. I'm about to go get 28. I'm about to go get 30 probably. Like, he has the potential to have that type of season after everything that's going on. But I think we're looking at a Ja Morant this upcoming season, a version of him that's a little bit more of a scorer. But now that I focused on Ja Morant, I'm going to take it to the big man in the middle, and I'm going to say Zach Edey. Zach Edey really showed signs at the end of the season, right, under Thomas Isolo, of a guy who is progressing really well. He won't get the normal summer. And, Joe, the question for me is going to be, at the end of this upcoming season, will we be saying, man, Zach Edey just had an uneven season. He had an injury at the beginning of the year, and it hurt his progress. Or will we be saying, yeah, the injury slowed him down a little bit, but he picked up right where he left off? If it's that, the Grizzlies are going to be a really good basketball team still. I think his forcefulness, his ability to rebound the basketball, his ability as a screen setter, he is naturally going to get stronger, and that is such a big part of his game. As he gets stronger, his production will improve. Once that happens, you're talking about a player who's going to really complement Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant really well.
I think that the good thing about Edey is you're not asking him to do some of the things that we're asking Jaren to do, or we're asking G.G. Jackson to do in terms of creating off the dribble, be a facilitator of offense. You're just expecting Edey to be big and rebound and screen set and be a primary rim protector, right? And those are all things that he should be able to jump right back in on. So I'm with you that hopefully it's not uneven. I could see it being so just because of injury. The Ja Morant piece, that this being his leap, I agree with you completely. It has to be. This team is now it's being built in his image in terms of what maximizes him. That was one of the focuses yesterday. And it's what maximizes Jaren too, because you and I and others have talked forever about how we thought, Jaren has a 5. What if Jaren could be a center, right? That would be really cool. To me, the Zach Edey pick and the firing of Taylor Jenkins is saying, no, you know what? Jaren Jackson Jr. is not a center. He might play there a little bit depending on matchup, and, that might be his secondary position, but Jaren's going to see a vast majority of his work as a 4. Okay, that means you have to have a true legitimate big, and that's why Landale was signed instead of Jay Huff. Jay Huff is not a true legitimate 5. Landale is. That's why you bring in the guys that you do on the wing, That's why I made an argument for Wells and Caldwell Pope. Now you don't have to worry about Ja Morant not being the best defender on the planet because he's never going to be asked to defend somebody that should go beyond him. And you know what the truth of that is? Scottie Pippen Jr. comes in for one of those two guys, and the same thing is true. Ja doesn't have to take that defensive assignment. Ty Jerome, he'd have to take that defensive assignment. So when we go down the road here a little bit on episodes of Locked On Grizzlies, I think you'll see those two together the least, Ja and Ty Jerome. But we'll talk more about that on another episode. I feel the urgency with Ja. Here you are. Desmond Bane is gone. And again, there's nothing that suggests that they had a bad relationship. But in terms of basketball on the court skills, you are now the guy. Dez is no longer a security blanket that could go off and score. And I got to let Dez get his. No, you go get yours now, Ja Morant. Jalen Wells and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are asked to do other things. Your job is to be that offensive linchpin, not just as a creator for others, but most importantly, as a creator for yourself. And that has to be the priority. And is Ja able to do that? We're going to find out here over the next several months. Let us know in the comments. Hit us up on X, at Joe Mullinax, at Damichael C. How are you feeling about urgency? We're both on the same page. It sounds like it's on Ja with a little bit of Zach Edey as well. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll close out this Wednesday edition of the show doing the same thing with reserves. Urgency. Who are we feeling the most urgent about from a reserve standpoint on this Grizzlies team? Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts on this episode, Joe Mullinax. And again, so wonderful to be able to say that. That means Damichael Cole, my terrific co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, is back. We've been talking urgency on this episode. Urgency regarding the city and the Grizzlies getting a lease done. We're raising our eyebrows a little bit, but we're not concerned over Sam Hardiman's post. It was Sam Hardiman, right? I want to make sure I say that right.
Yeah, definitely. Sam Hardiman, one of the best, one of the best reporters in the city.
I want to make sure he's getting his proper respect. So shout out to Sam and the Daily Memphian. So worth noting, but not panicking yet. Still, urgency should be there to make sure Memphis keeps really amplifying what downtown can be. Then you have the urgency on Ja Morant. If this team's going to be a playoff team, just reiterating, Ja has to be that scorer. It's not just creating for others anymore. It's creating for himself. Now we apply that same logic to the reserves, right? And on yesterday's show, I said Ty Jerome. I said Scottie Pippen Jr. I said Santi Aldama. I said Brandon Clark. Those guys are locked in reserves again when the team is healthy. Obviously, they won't be on opening night, as I said earlier, but let's assume they're healthy in a fairy tale happy land where candy comes from the sky. All right. Ty Jerome, Scottie Pippen Jr., Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, and then whoever wins that 10th rotation spot. Where do you feel the most urgency there? For me, I think it stems from Brandon Clark. And maybe that'll surprise you a little bit that I bring up Brandon Clark in that space. I need to see Brandon Clark be able to play with every single one of those guys. Like, if you just chalk up Zach Edey and Brandon Clark as a group that can't play together, I think that limits Brandon Clark's value on this Grizzlies team. And if you're exploring trades, as a noted Brandon Clark guy, that's me, except for Modern Medicine, right? Shout out to Modern Medicine. I did have my questions.
Shout out to Modern Medicine.
But I think that Clark has to have enough to his game where he's making what, $12 million or so a year. You can't just say, he can only play 12 minutes a game because he can't play with Edey. He has to show aspects of his game has improved enough, and that includes 3-point shooting, that he can be able to play a little bit with Zach Edey so he's not the 9th minute getter on this team. That's not good roster construction. If we're worried about the CBA and these aprons and trading away Desmond Bane, one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, you have to find that spacing somewhere else, and you can't have someone that's actively part of your rotation that conflicts so violently with someone in Zach Edey, who you could pretty easily argue is the third most important Grizzly going into the next year or two in terms of how they're building this thing around Tomas Isolo.
Yeah, this one's actually pretty easy for me, Joe. I look at it like this. The urgency isn't with a certain player. It's with a position group. The urgency is with the wings. This year, This season, the Grizzlies need to find their long-term answer. No more, this guy can be that. No more, this guy looks like this in 5 minutes, and in the next 5 minutes, he looks like that. You are very confident in John Morant. You're very confident in Jalen Wells. These things have been said publicly. You're very confident in Zach Edey. You're very confident in Jaren Jackson Jr. There is one spot in between those guys where we've seen the highs of a Vince Williams Jr., where people have felt at times that he would be the guy. We've seen the highs of a G.G. Jackson, where at times people have felt like he would be the guy. And we're about to see, or we have since draft night, seen the highs of a Cedric Coward, where some people feel like he's the guy. It's three different players. At some point when you throw these things at the wall, Joe, something's got to stick. You got three different type of players for the most part. Cedric Coward is this two-way guy, very efficient scorer, right? G.G. Jackson's more of the dynamic scorer who has to make a little bit progress on the defensive end. Vince Williams is not really known as a scorer, but he can knock down some three-point shots, and he's already shown, when he's been at his healthiest, he can be a quality NBA defender and a pesky one. So you got three different types of players here that we're talking about. And I just think when you talk about reserve goals, we need to be coming around All-Star break. We need to, when we get to this part of the summer next year, we should be fairly confident in saying, oh, yeah, Cedric Coward's the guy. He's going to be that fifth piece to the starting lineup. Or G. Jackson is that guy. Because team options, which, there's some options in the contracts of G.G. Jackson and Vince Williams that we'll talk about those later. But the Grizzlies are going to have to make some decisions on those guys here coming up soon. So it is urgent because with those players, they are the keys. They are the linchpins to tying together what this franchise looks like for the long term in competing for a championship. Right now, we just listed the four guys where there's confidence in them being starters. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he's a nice piece, but he's a veteran. He's a little bit older. You're bringing him in. You're going to see how it looks, how it works out. But again, the potential of a G.G. Jackson, the potential of a Vince Williams, the potential of a Cedric Coward, all three of them have it. And I think this season we need to see, it could be multiple of those guys pull away, but we need to see at least one of them rise to the occasion.
I like that. And especially with somebody like Cedric Coward, we've talked so much about money regarding him, right? With Duke and, all the big bidding war, how the NIL era could help Memphis in that way. If Duke was willing to spend on this guy, obviously they aren't too concerned about his shoulder or any of those other issues that might be there. I'm with you on the wing. I think that's fair. I am curious to see how they address that position moving forward. They have to make a choice among Gigi and Vince in particular. I feel like this is a really significant season for them. Although I will say, and I've been on, Locked On Lakers and Los Angeles sports radio the last couple of days. Shout out to Andy for having me on, but the team option should be picked up, right? Hopefully we learned a lesson from Jake LaRavia and those guys. Maybe the extension question maybe can be what we have a question about. But all team options should be picked up moving forward because I think the Grizzlies would love to have a Jake LaRavia on the roster going into next season at this stage. But obviously he is not. He is out hanging out with his new best friend, Luka Doncic. Thanks for being with us on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. Now that you've made Locked On Grizzlies your first listen, go ahead and check out the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA YouTube or wherever you listen on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Damichael, again, as we keep grinding forth our commitment to closing out July strong, maybe we can kind of visit or, you had the one wonderful episode there from Summer League, but you weren't able to talk about everything you heard or saw in Summer League. Maybe just kind of like a emptying of the notebook, so to speak, in terms of your Summer League adventures and what you thought of the team that you saw and other teams that you saw, perhaps, in terms of their youth. Maybe you fear the Hornets moving forward, the newly crowned Summer League champions.
Yeah, I like that idea. There were a lot of things that we actually haven't really dived deep into. That some notes, I guess you could say, that I have from Summer League. So yeah, we could definitely look into a couple of those things, whether it be with the rookies, whether it be with the Grizzlies veterans, who are in attendance. things around the team. There's a lot more to unpack there for sure.
I like it. So make sure you're checking out our Thursday edition of the show. Damichael emptying the old Summer League notebook. Hopefully not emptying too much, right? We don't want to go too public with all the craziness that you got to enjoy out there in Sin City. Thank you for being with us on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google. Make sure you are making us a part of your Memphis Grizzlies and NBA content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Be an everydayer if you're not already one, and if you are, we appreciate you for being one. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. Again, wonderful to be able to say this once more. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Continue to have a good week, hopefully, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow here on Locked On Grizzlies. See ya.